Show, this is a Kafka Skewer channel. Let's continue to talk about Apache Kafka. And I will try to go more deeply with the Apache Kafka architecture and try to explain some things, some basic stuff regarding Kafka. So it is important to understand how the Kafka internals work. So let's go. First thing it's important to you to know, its producer is not dependent of the consumer. So if you start to produce a message, you can produce a message, and consumer can consume a message independent. It's not dependent. Or I mean, you can use the producer without the consumer and consumer without producer, right? This is a kind of thing. It's important to you know. And yeah, basically, this is a kind of thing I would like to review with you. But let's go a little bit more internal Kafka. So Kafka, as you know, is a log. So which means when you have a partitions, I mean, when you have a topic, right? When you create a topic, you create a topic, and this topic you choose the number of partitions. If you do not choose the number of partitions, Kafka will use the default number of partition. You can configure this in the server properties inside the broker configuration. But and inside the partitions, basically Kafka will create the log segments in the storage in your file, in a specific file, right? So what is important to understand here? Inside this log, Kafka have this block here, and the name of this block is the offsets, right? And the offset starts on the left to the right, from beginning to and whatever number. I mean, yeah, a lot of numbers. So basically starting the 0 and the start and go. And first entry of the recording is here, right? And you go in the next entry that will be recorded. Is the name of this blocker here is offset. So when you consumer or producer want to produce a message, so producer will start to produce the first offset, 0 offset, 1 offset, 2 offset, and go. And consumer needs to consume this offset, right? So, for example, in Kafka, it's possible in consumer to specify, I want to consume just this specific offset here. The number of offsets you can choose, right? This is a kind of thing you can do. So logs in data structure represented by queue. So here is like a queue, but it's not a queue, right? It's a new element. It will save it at the end. So new elements all the times will send in at the end, right? Is immutable. This other element saved is and all elements added are ordered or in time. So we have a timestamp that we know that exactly the time that this offset is saved on Kafka. This is important to understand regarding the logs, right? This is a central element in Kafka are logs. So let's go to the streaming to explain a little bit how the streaming works. So basically, stream is a sequence of events. So we have the past, the present, and the future. So basically, the past is the records that we know the Kafka didn't. The present is the right moment, and the future is any plus 1 or 2, because the future, I don't know how much the flow of the message will continue or not. But Kafka do not waiting in the future. He know the things come and works and generate. And the streaming is immutable, which means the streaming process does not modify the existing streaming, but always a new will generate, right? This is in some concept of restreaming is important to know. Let's go and talk about the brokers and how the balance and the things in the Kafka brokers works. And I have a hypothetical scenario here. So we have a lot of sources that send the messages, right? This message is sent to Kafka, and I have my topic here. The topic, the name of the topic is topic, the original, right? And the way I choose 3 partitions, the replication equal 3. Sorry, how does it work in the internal Kafka? So basically, Kafka will choose partitions leaders between brokers. I mean, so by default, it's round robin. So Kafka will reply between the brokers, in this scenario, I have only 3 brokers, but if we have more brokers, you can split from all the brokers. But here, just to explain to you, there's a good balance between brokers, and this is another important thing that our administration guys need to do in Kafka. For Kafka, if we can have the same amount of partitions leader per broker, it's the best way to work with Kafka. Why? Because when messengers or producer want to produce a message to Kafka, he need to know the first thing Kafka do, right? This is an internal thing. So this is producer here. We want to produce this message. But before he started send the message, he will talk with Kafka broker, and Kafka broker will talk, okay, this is the partition topic one, and the partitions leaders live in these brokers. So partition 1 live in broker 1, partition 2 in broker 2, partition 3 in broker 3. So they have a split, and all this the other partitions here, as you can see, is the replication between the partitions. So partition 1 have a partition leader here, and another replica here, another replica here, right? So when you start to produce a message, this is important, they will start to produce a message on the partition leader, and so Kafka will replicate this partition, the messages here, to this other partition here, it is another partition here, and this will happen with all, right? And why, back to the understood the partition leader concept, why it's important to stay more with the same partition leader between brokers. If I have a lot of topics, for example, it's good to use away and rebalance the partitions between brokers, because when you start to produce or consume messages in Kafka, our producers will send the throughput to the Kafka leader, the partitions leader, which means this broker will receive all the load of the messages. So imagine it in scenario that all the partitions leader I have only broker 1. So you can see how the messages come to broker 1, and broker 2 and broker 3 do not receive anything. It's just a replica. So it is not a good, it's better to balance the load between brokers, right? This is a distributed mode concept as important to right? So, another thing to know is when you start to consume messages in Kafka here, Kafka have a concept that he will open a JVM page cache, so it's a kind of service on the broker side. And if you have more consumers consuming the same brokers, perhaps you can see more memory, CPU, and probably storage average or load of the storage using. So it's better to try to select this. Try to think this way. If imagine you have a lot of topics, but it's not in this scenario. We have some kind of calculation. This is how you need to keep in mind. If I have 3 brokers, what is good to me to decide the number of partitions, right? It's good to choose 3 with replica 3 because I have 3 brokers, or perhaps 6, or perhaps 9, which means I can have exactly the same number of partitions between brokers. This is a good way to think regarding Kafka when you decide the number of partitions, right? How you can split the load between the brokers. So this is a kind of thing that Kafka administrator need to think and need to care about, because it's important. Sometimes you can see more some brokers use with more partitions leaders. We have a cruiser control that can help us to do this automatically distribute, but this is a kind of thing we can do in another video. But yeah, that's it. I prepare here a quick a quick Docker Compose that we can talk about, but let's do this in next video. And that's it. If you have any question, please send to me. And that's it. Thank you so much.